Hello and welcome to The Real World. My name is Cameron. Today on episode 54 of The Real World podcast, we're talking all about our favorite directorial debuts. Thank you so much for joining us here in The Real World. Today we are going to kick things off with movie news, as we usually do. All right, so this week in movie news, we learned that Netflix has hired Greta Gerwig. She's the one behind Little Women, Lady Bird, and the upcoming Barbie movie to direct two films based on the Chronicles of Narnia book series by C.S. Lewis. Netflix acquired the rights to these books a couple years back, and now they've finally hired a director. We do not know which books in the series she will be taking on, but definitely looking forward to what she's going to do with adapting these famous, very popular books. Next up, Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon will include several spin-off films and series. He has stated that he created a 450-page Bible which includes a vast universe similar to that of Marvel and Star Wars. So he's got a lot of information on this vast universe he is creating, the sci-fi world that he is building with the first two Rebel Moon movies. The first one is set to release this December, and then the second film will follow the year after. It's going to be spun off into all kinds of things. Obviously, Netflix wants this to last for a long time. They kind of see it as their own version of Star Wars. So we'll have to wait and see if it ends up being as great as we all hope it to be. Next up, Deadpool 3 has officially confirmed Jennifer Garner is returning to the role of Elektra. She, of course, originated that role in 2003's Daredevil, and some reports suggest that Ben Affleck himself will be appearing as Daredevil again in Deadpool 3, alongside Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. Rumors have been swirling about this movie for a long time. A lot of people think it's going to be a multiverse movie, so they think we could get the Fantastic Four back, we could get all the original X-Men back. Who knows what's going to happen with Deadpool 3, but we all know it's going to be a wild ride. Next up, 28 weeks later, the sequel has now been confirmed as being in development. Alex Garland is writing. Danny Boyle is supposedly back in director's chair, and Cillian Murphy wants to return to star in another 28 Days Later film. They're skipping over 28 months later and going straight to 28 years later. That's the title of this film, which would be the third in the franchise. 28 Days Later. 28 Days Later was released in 2002, and 28 Weeks Later was released in 2007. That's going to be an interesting film. I'm a big fan of a lot of different zombie movies, and 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later are two of my favorites. Next up, Guillermo del Toro teased some fun plans for the upcoming 10th anniversary of Pacific Rim. This is one of the most fun movies in recent years. It's celebrating its 10th anniversary this week, so we're expecting some news soon. I don't know if it's going to be a re-release into theaters, if they're announcing another sequel, or what's going on, but this is a really fun movie. If you like big monsters fighting big robots, this is the movie for you. Another movie celebrating its 20th anniversary this year is none other than Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I have a blast watching this. I've watched this numerous times over the years. This came out when I was really getting into movies, and I've seen all the sequels in theaters. I really enjoy the entire franchise, especially the first three movies. But there's something really special about this first one. It started the whole thing. Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow, one of the most iconic movie characters of all time. Jeffrey Rush as Captain Barbossa. Will Turner, played by Orlando Bloom. Keira Knightley as Elizabeth Swann. I mean, this is just one of the best high seas, swashbuckling action-adventure movies ever made. Definitely worth watching. It's now back in theaters for only a couple weeks, so check it out as soon as possible. If you have not seen it, it's also streaming on Disney+. You can pick up the Blu-ray like I have here. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen it yet. All right, folks, that's it. It's time to jump into our favorite directorial debuts. Be sure to follow us on social media as well. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We're also on Letterboxd. And these two guys are both on Letterboxd as well. I'm going to introduce to you our guests. First up is Bert. How you doing, man?
Fantastic as usual. How's it going, Cam?
Doing great. Thanks for joining us again. And also coming back is Josh. Hey, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you here. This should be a very fun discussion. We've each got 5 picks, so we got a lot of movies to cover. So we're going to jump right in. Our main topic today, that is all about directorial debuts. So this simply means the first film from any given director. So we basically looked at some of our favorite directors, some of our favorite movies, and determined, this list that way. We picked this topic because this week Insidious The Red Door is in theaters, and it marks the directorial debut of Patrick Wilson, who many people know as an actor. He's been in many movies like Aquaman, Watchmen. He's actually a Florida native, so yeah, he's making his directorial debut with that franchise, which he's been a part of since the beginning. So it's always fun to see an actor, kind of branch out into directorial effort. And so, we wanted to talk just a little bit about, how we pick these movies. I looked a lot at the director. I also looked at the movie, of course, but the director I thought was an interesting thing to look at because it's fun to see how a director grows over his career, and how much they can change over time. Every director really has one unique skill, and that is their point of view, their perspective on any given story or how they're going to tell it visually through this visual medium of film. Perspective really gives them their unique voice and sets them apart. Their own interests, their own experiences is what really makes them different and forms their style. Directors can, of course, take inspiration from one another, but there's no reason to copy what other people are doing. At the end of the day, the director is making all the decisions about how the movie looks and how it sounds and what the actors are doing. So I like directors with a real clear style. And I think that's kind of going to be, more of what I'm gearing my picks towards. The best directors, they don't really think about the audience as much as they just think about the story that they want to tell, the story that they want to see. They look at themselves as audience members. And I think that's how we get some of our best directors, some of our best movies. Even some of the best directors, though, don't have the greatest debuts. I was looking back at some of my favorites, and some of their early work just isn't as great as some of their later work. So it's really interesting to see, these ones that we're talking about today are just great movies right out of the gate. And it's just such a rarity, I find, that it's really, really fun to talk about. So that's what I was thinking. Bert and Josh, were you guys thinking similarly? Bert, did you have any other thoughts you wanted to throw out there on this?
Yeah, I mean, you had a good kind of recap of that. Yeah, I mean, the vision really is what is interesting because some of these movies that we love might look completely different,
Right.
You can think of extremes, but yeah, it's their vision. And so all like the editing choices, they have final say in all of that stuff. So I guess you could say we have the director to thank or to, mock, depending on how the film turns out.
Right, exactly. Josh, any other thoughts on this?
I was kind of going between both movies that really impacted me that I saw that were a first-time director or a directorial debut. And there were a couple of those, and then ones that I just love, or both. So it was kind of a mix of both of those here.
Excellent. Excellent. Great thoughts, guys. All right, let's jump in because we got a lot of movies to talk about. We're going to jump in with some honorable mentions. All right, it's time to jump in with these honorable mentions. There's quite a few I have here, so I'm going to jump in quick with these. One of the movies I mentioned on our horror movies podcast, a classic called The Night of the Hunter. This is the first film from Charles Laughton, who was an actor who turned into a director. Unfortunately, the only movie he ever made. It was a bomb. Wow. It was critically panned at the time, and he ended up kind of losing interest. But it's a classic film. Got the Criterion edition here. Another great one, a classic horror movie from George Romero, Night of the Living Dead. This is a really, really good horror movie that I get a lot out of, and it's one of the first zombie movies ever made. So definitely worth watching. And then a director I like called Terrence Malick. His first film was Badlands, which I also really like, with Martin Sheen, Sissy Spacek. Steven Spielberg's first movie. It's not his best, but I think it's still worth watching. It's called Duel. It's actually made for television, and he eventually got a theatrical release later. Then, of
Oh,
course, I had to
interesting.
mention George Lucas, who I'm a huge fan of, Star Wars. His first movie is THX 1138, which is a
Oh,
dystopian sci-fi film, definitely worth checking out. And then a stuntman who became a director, directed one of my favorite comedies, Smokey and the Bandit. This is a fun
hmm.
movie I really get a kick out of, and so had to mention that one as well. Of course, I've got the whole box set here, but the first Mad Max movie was the
Mm.
first movie by George Miller, Australian
Oh,
director.
wow.
And I'm a big fan of all of the Mad Max movies, but really do like the first one quite a bit. So those are a few of mine. Josh, why don't you give us a few of yours?
I also had one that was a stuntman that was his first directorial debut was Extraction. And I
Ah,
thought you were going to say Extraction, or the only other one I know who was a stuntman director was the guy who did John Wick. So I didn't know. I wonder how many there are because I didn't know how many. I didn't know there was another one. I mean, I'm
yeah,
sure there's a lot, but yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
yeah.
It is.
It seems like there's a lot in animation that they give a lot of
Mhm.
directors. These studios give directors a lot of first-time directors a shot at these movies that end up being pretty big. So like Tarzan, directed by Chris Buck. I don't know if I said Extraction was directed by Sam Hargrave, but it is.
Yeah.
The Lion King was Roger Allen and Rob Minkoff.
Yep.
And then Toy Story, John Lasseter. Toy Story
Mhm.
4, Josh Cooley. So a lot of Up was Bob Peterson. A lot of animated movies that have
Hmm.
first time directors, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is definitely cool. Yeah, that's a medium that definitely they give a lot of opportunities to people. Bert, you want to give us a few of yours?
Sure. I got Jeremy Chechik, who was the director of National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Yeah.
Not a well-known director.
Yep.
Cameron Crowe for Say Anything. This is another
Oh,
good outing, first outing there.
yep. Of
Uh, I got to mention Jean Debont for Speed, and of
course.
course he was.
Mm.
I think he's still alive. Great cinematographer.
Yes.
Um, Another one I'll mention here is Gore Verbinski for Mouse Hunt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is a movie our family really enjoys. So unless you're afraid of mice.
Right. Excellent. Great picks. All right, I'm going to run through a few of mine. I still got a few left here. This is Spinal Tap, which is Rob Reiner's first
Mm.
movie,
Mm, yeah,
mockumentary. Really
for
like
sure.
that one a lot. Frank Oz did The Dark Crystal. This was his first
Mm.
movie
Right.
as a director, which I really enjoy as well. Kevin Costner's first film, Dances with Wolves, an Academy Award-winning film.
Yeah.
Pretty stellar debut there for him. An
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
actor turned director, another one. Trimmers, Ron Underwood directed this. This is a favorite. I watch this all the time. I have a blast with this one. So that one's a lot of fun too. Of course, one of my favorites is Robert Rodriguez, El Mariachi, his super low budget movie that he made that put him on the map. And then Frank Darabont, of course, directed The Shawshank Redemption. That was his first movie, which is absolutely
Wow.
incredible. And then
Good.
jumping into more modern guys, of course, Zack Snyder with Dawn of the Dead, the remake
I like
of
that
the
one.
George
Yeah.
Romero, classic zombie
Mhm.
movie. Ruben Fleischer with another zombie movie, Zombie
Mm.
Land. This is
I
his
love
first
that one.
movie,
Yep.
which is really fun. And he's gone on to do a couple other things recently. And then a couple guys that I really like. Neil Blomkamp, of course, with District 9, which is one of my favorite sci-fi movies of recent years. That's his first movie. And Duncan Jones, who is the son of David Bowie, he did a great movie
Mm.
called Moon with Sam Rockwell, which I
Oh, I
really
saw that.
enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one that I like a lot. Of course, Joseph Kosinski, who's now risen to fame with Top Gun Maverick. His first film was Tron Legacy,
Hmm.
which I get a
Oh,
big kick out
wow.
of as well. Alex Garland, who's been a writer in Hollywood for a while, but he made his directorial debut with Ex Machina a few years back, which is a really good kind of
Yeah, I
sci-fi
saw that one.
thriller. And then, of course, he's risen to stardom very quickly. He's only done 3 movies, but Jordan Peele, Get Out, is a great debut for a director. Another animated one, Travis Knight with Leica. His first film was Kubo and the Two Strings, which
Mm.
I'm a huge fan of. I think this is a spectacular stop motion film. And then another, going back to another actor who turned director very recently, it's Bradley Cooper with A Star Is Born, this remake, which I thought was excellent. So those are my honorable mentions. Josh, did you have any more?
You had a few more. Ex Machina, like you also mentioned.
Yep.
The Maze Runner, which was Westball.
Yeah.
Let's see. I went out of order here, jumping around to the animated ones. So which ones did I mention yet? The 2005 rendition of Pride and Prejudice, that was
Mm,
directed by Joe Wright. Uh, let's see. Emma, with a period.
yeah.
I think that's 2022, I think is what it was. It's Autumn Day Wild or Wild. I don't know. It had Wild with an E. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. X-Men Dark Phoenix was Simon Kinberg.
Hmm.
Um, Peanut Butter Falcon was Tyler Nilson and Michael Schwartz. Mulan, the animated one, was Tony Bancroft and Barry Cook. Tick Tick Boom, Lin-Manuel Miranda. Serenity, Joss Whedon, and then Slow West, John McLean.
Excellent. Great picks. Bert, did you have any more?
I had a couple. Well, I had Zombieland on mine for honorable mention, as well as Tron Legacy. But
Mm.
a couple more. I'd Dean Israelite is the director's name. He did a film called Project Almanac about 10 years ago. It was my number one movie of the year. I'm pretty big
Mm.
into time travel movies, and I really liked the way that this one was carried out, and it looked good and that kind of thing. Kind of a fun adventure. So I got to mention that one. And then another one is it's actually a documentary called Catfish. And I don't know if you've heard of the TV show or seen the documentary,
Yeah.
but
I've heard of the
the
show.
couple guys named Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman. But yeah, it was a real life story. At least I don't think it's faked. I mean, there's all kinds of conspiracies about it, but about these two
Mm.
guys that one of them was catfished, and they sort of followed this story as it went along, and it's kind of crazy how it turned out, and they captured it all. The one friend was a documentarian, as it was. So when his buddy got catfished, he started documenting, and very, very interesting and kind of shocking at the same time. I really recommend that film.
Oh,
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent, guys. Well, that's it for our honorable mentions. So now we're ready to jump in to our top five. So each of us have a list of five movies we wanted to run through. Kind of the bottom three, we're just going to go through somewhat quickly, and then we're going to focus on each of our top twos. We shared those with each other so we could go watch them or rewatch them if we had already seen them, or watch them if we hadn't. So it's been a fun week, but we're going to get started off with my number five, which is a classic from 1941. It is Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane, which is hailed by many as one of the greatest films ever made, just because of how revolutionary it was at the time. The
Mm.
techniques, Orson Welles, who stars, directs, wrote, and produced it, I think.
Wow.
Um, yeah, he was pretty incredible filmmaker back in the day, and he did a great job with this. I mean, they're employing things, like I said, that hadn't really been done before on film. You know,
mm.
flashback, you know, a nonlinear narrative, which people weren't really used to. The very striking kind of lighting and cinematography that still holds up very well to this day. Full of great performances, a great mystery kind of story. It ended up being somewhat predictive of his own life in a strange way. So it's a really good movie. If you haven't seen it, you definitely should watch it. But that's my number five. Bert, what do you have at your number five?
I have John Lasseter for Toy Story,
Oh yeah,
and it was groundbreaking. I mean, it was pretty much the first feature to have this new sort of quote 3D animation, and just the vision that he gave to that project. I feel like every bit of that production is just so high quality. The script is so clever and tight and well, so well acted. It looks great. I can remember Siskel and Ebert talking about this movie when it came out, and how they could, there was a scene where there was a bedspread and the toys are on it, and they could see like little holes in the bed, the tiny little holes, and just it was just mind blowing, and it was at that time. It was really
Mm.
incredible, such a, like a leap forward in animation, and that's always stuck with me. And it's just a great, fun family film, funny throughout, endearing. Just a greght one.
excellent, great pick.
Yeah.
Josh, what is your number five?
For my number five, I went with District 9 by Neil Blomkamp. That's how you say it. I think that's how you said it
Yes,
earlier. I was not expecting literally anything about this movie
That's
except that
great.
there were aliens. That's all I knew is that there were
That's
aliens,
the
and it
best
was
way to
kind of like,
watch it.
ooh. Yeah, I knew absolutely nothing. I didn't know it was like a documentary-esque style or kind of like, whatever, like The Officer and stuff like that. So I was like thrown by that, and I was like, this is the whole. At first, you think it's just the intro, the beginning, and then it's like, oh, this is the whole movie. Okay. Um, and yeah, just the way that he used sci-fi is such a good medium for making us look at things in a different way or dealing with tough issues in a way that uh, kind of like kind of like the prophet Nathan telling King David about the sheep and the guy stealing the one sheep that the one guy had, and David, of course, reacts and he's like, "Well, that's unfair. We should, fix this." And obviously, there's more to it than that. But Nathan reveals the truth behind the story. So, kind of same thing here. You see, like, I get this is in Johannesburg, South Africa, are like a good like the whole thing is representation of racism and all the people being racist against the aliens and stuff like
Yep.
that. And it's just a really powerful way of telling a story, and really engaging, keeps your attention. Yeah, it totally blew me away.
Awesome. Awesome. Great pick. Yeah, that's a good one for sure. All right, moving on to my next film, another classic black and white, the quintessential film noir. Like this is the first one that comes to mind when I think of the word noir, and that whole kind of genre. It's The Maltese Falcon. This one, the directorial debut of John Huston, who went on to direct many films that I enjoy, like The African Queen, Asphalt Jungle, The Man Who Would Be King. So many great movies that he directed over his long career.
Mm.
This one, of course, starring Humphrey Bogart as Sam Spade, this detective who's on the hunt for the titular Falcon. It's just one of those great, great classic movies with, again, wonderful performances and just a very specific look that was really unique and that again kind of defined an entire genre for a long time. So definitely worth watching if you haven't checked out the Maltese Falcon. It's worth checking out. So that's my number four pick. Bert, give us your number four.
Actually, I've got District 9 at my number 4.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
And I'll echo some of the things that Josh said. I mean, I love that sort of pseudo documentary style, and it's so jarring. It kind of
Mm.
reminds me a little bit of Cloverfield, the first Cloverfield, because you don't really know where the film is going, and as the screws kind of tighten throughout the film, it just gets more and more tense, and
Hmm.
it's a bit shocking, when you're experiencing the film. And I went into
Yeah.
it. I think I knew aliens were in it, but I knew nothing about it. And I love seeing every film that way if I
Sweet.
can, frankly. And it's perfect that way because you just can't believe that where it goes, and you kind of want it to go there, but it's so shocking at the same time. And Charlton Copley, I mean, his performance is
Mm.
tremendous. He's one of my favorite actors. He's not in that much, frankly, but he was really good in it. I like the look of it, the aliens, and it's just different
Hmm.
enough to set itself apart. And it is, it does have that metaphor of apartheid throughout it, and
Hmm.
it's pretty obvious, but still, it works. And yeah, it's just an all around very good, kind of a film that isn't mentioned a whole lot. I don't know that many people saw it, but it's very, very good.
Yep, definitely. I'm still waiting for the sequel. I hope he gets to make it
No,
one day. District 10.
you're
Um,
right.
all right, Josh, give us your number four pick.
So for number four, I have Lilo and Stitch, directed by Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, I think I pretty much loved this one out of the gate. Grew up watching it as a kid, and it's still one of my all-time favorite animated movies. There's just so much to love about it. Obviously, the cute, adorable Stitch, who is like Disney's best-selling toy or plush or whatever he's on. And then you just got like the family and lines like Ohana means family and family means no one gets left behind or forgotten. Just some great, great laughs, great emotional, impactful moments like that, or when Stitch gets lost, different things like that. It's a really good adventure film, really fun, and hopefully the live action is just as good.
Hope so. All right, great. We're going to move into our number three picks now. My number three is Joe versus the Volcano. This one by a director named John Patrick Shanley, who is actually a playwright. So he
Oh
was in
wow.
theater for a long time before he jumped into movies. This one is just excellent. It's a great film, strikingly memorable visuals, great performances from both Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. I just think they're absolutely great in this movie. Meg Ryan's playing like 3 different roles, and it's just so much fun. Really fun, kind of comedy mixed with some adventure, mixed with a romance. It's got kind of all that stuff going on, and it's just a movie that I hadn't seen until fairly recently. Within the past 2 or 3 years, I think I had just watched it. So not one that I've watched innumerable times or anything yet, but it's one that I really get a kick out of. It's just got a really specific style. It's very unique in the way it's written and the way it looks. It's this fantasy kind of world, but it's still our reality in other ways. It's just really interesting, the whole look and feel of the movie. So yeah, again, another one I recommend if you haven't seen it, Joe versus the Volcano.
I still need to see that one.
Yeah,
All right, Bert, give us your number 3.
I've got Jordan Peele with Get Out.
Nice.
And I didn't get a chance to go back and rewatch this. I want to watch it again soon, but I do remember it very well. It's a very good looking film. It's great to see a filmmaker anytime they come up with a new idea and they put it together and it works so well. But I have to mention that there aren't many black directors in Hollywood, and and a lot of times there'll be a black movie and it's aimed more at a certain demographic, and it's not sort of a widespread film. Not that it's a bad film, but I'm just saying that unfortunately too often black directors don't get a chance to do that sort of big budget movie. Jordan Peele's just taking the bull by the horns and saying, look, I've got a great movie here. I'm gonna make a great movie. Here it is. And Get Out is very good. And of course it sets in motion even better movies to come after it. I feel like Us and what was the recent one that we liked so much last year? Nope. Yeah.
Nope.
How could I forget Nope? Yeah. And so it's just a great kickoff to that. It's not really a trilogy, but it's just a really enjoyable film, and kind of a almost a wink to the audience a little bit sometimes with some of the humor, and can't wait to see what this guy does next.
Absolutely. Excellent selection. Josh, we're on to your number 3 pick.
So my number 3 is Mission Impossible 3, directed by J.J. Abrams, his first outing as director. It was also the first Mission Impossible film I saw. I don't know why I started with 3, but I don't know, I did, and it just blew me away. It's still one of the most intense movies I've seen, but at that time it was the most intense movie I'd ever seen. I was probably, I don't know, maybe somewhere around 15-ish at the time. Yeah, and just right out of the gate with the intro that we see at the end of the movie, and then and you're just like, whoa, and then the theme starts and you're like, holy cow, this is gonna be a ride. And it is. And looking back, it's not got some of the as big a stunts as some of the newer stuff, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It's still, the whole thing is gripping and everyone plays their part amazingly. I think this is the first time we see Simon Pegg's character. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and which of course he just stays throughout the whole thing, and he's amazing. He's one of my favorite characters. And then when I found out later that it was J.J. Abrams' first movie, that just blew me away too. I was like, holy cow!
Yeah,
his first movie, and I know he's done TV before, but and then he does this, and that was just it was just incredible. Really well done.
Excellent.
I got a lot to say about MI3, by the way, but I'm going to save it for our podcast.
I was about to say next week's podcast is our Mission podcast, and it is going to be full of everything Mission Impossible. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. So awesome. Okay, guys. Well, we're here at our top 2 selections. Again, these are the ones we shared with one another throughout the week. We discussed, and we got to rewatch or watch for the first time some of us. So we're going to start with my number 2, which is a movie called Slow West. So this is a sort of a modern revisionist Western, I guess you could say. This was released June 26th, 2015. Has a runtime of 1 hour, 24 minutes. Great director here, John McLean. This is actually his only film thus far. So we haven't seen him do anything past this yet. Hopefully we get to soon. But he's a musician. He's actually a Scottish musician. He's worked with several very popular bands in Scotland and throughout Europe.
Wow.
And so, he's got a background in music. He has directed some of his own music videos as well before this, but this is his feature film debut. He's a guy who caught the eye of Michael Fassbender, who stars in this movie. as a character named Silas. It was really Fassbender that kind of urged him to make a movie. So
Hmm.
they became close, and he had this idea for a Western, and so they ended up making it. Small independent film, very low budget. Didn't really make much money because it didn't really get a wide release in theaters. It's just kind of one of those hidden gems that I ended up finding, and it's just a great movie. It's one I've enjoyed many times. It's very kind of musical in its kind of feel and vibe. It has a lot of great music throughout the film, and it kind of the story itself is very kind of lyrical and poetic in many ways.
Mm.
It's layered, and even the visuals are very much, you know, kind of that you know, interesting type of storytelling. It's almost like a storybook. It even has that narration over it. Michael Fassbender's character is kind of narrating the whole story, and so it's definitely a unique feeling Western. It's not one of your kind of gritty, grounded Westerns. It certainly has, you know, the kind of gritty violence of a lot of Westerns, but it balances those two things well, the intensity and the kind of violence and drama with a lot of kind of humor and kind of silliness almost, to the film. It kind of almost reminds me, I guess if I had to compare it to something, would be something like a Coen Brothers type movie in many ways,
Mm.
where they balance that kind of, you know, again, that humor and drama, you know, is always there, kind of the going back and forth between the two. So this one, as the title suggests, is quite slowly paced. You know, it's kind of about these two characters just traveling across America, as one of them's looking for his long lost love. You know, this young kind of idealistic character played by Cody Smith-McPhee, who does a great job in this role. It really it's very much a two-hander, as they say. It's really these two characters that are polar opposites. Michael Fassbender's character Silas, and then Cody Smith-McPhee's character Jay, just from two totally different walks of life. They're different ages. They're, you know, just very very different characters, and they're kind of teaching each other a lot
Mm.
throughout the movie, and it's just really well done. The performances are excellent. Ben Mendelsohn also shows up here as a director, an actor I really really enjoy. Marvel fans know him as Talos. He's in the new Secret Invasion show, which if you're not watching, you definitely need to check out. It's a really good show on Disney Plus. Karen Pistorius plays Rose Ross, who is the character that they're seeking throughout this entire journey. So it's just a great central relationship, I think, is really the main thing that makes this movie work, is those two lead performances. It also utilizes flashbacks very well, as we get to know who Jay was back in Scotland and his connection with Rose. And so it just is all really really well done. Again, great music. It's, you know, the director's a musician, so obviously it's going to have a lot of music, and it utilizes music very well. He also knows when not to use music, though, which is important. Great camera work, beautiful locations, all shot
Mm.
in New Zealand, I believe, standing in for the American West. But just great, great looking scenery, vibrant color, and just, you know, amazing, amazing cinematography. Very well edited. You know, like I said, it's under an hour and a half. I mean, it really does breeze by for as slowly paced as it is. It doesn't feel too long. And it utilizes a unique aspect ratio, which is 166:1. You don't see a lot of movies that way. They're kind of little tiny black bars on the side of your screen. Just, I picked that up, thought that was interesting. I really like how the whole thing ends up too. I really do enjoy going on this journey with these characters. You know, people have said it's a sad ending. It is, but there's certainly hope and happiness towards the end of it as well. So I really like it. Again, I like that Silas is narrating what is essentially Jay Cavendish's story, because Jay is the one who affects change in Silas more towards the end of the movie. You really get that, and it really hits home, and it's quite emotional. I get a little choked up at the end every time. So there's a couple lines of dialogue I wanted to mention too. Is that Jay sees America as a land of hope and goodwill, whereas Silas sees it as a land of evil, betrayal, and death. So that's kind of where they
Mm.
start off on this journey. And they kind of cross over in a certain way. Like Jay very much learns how cruel the world can be, and Silas is kind of given a little bit of hope, especially towards the end, which I thought is, again, just a really impactful and cool story, the way they told it. Jay has another line when he meets some traveling musicians. He says, "Love is universal like death." And I think that kind of sums up this story perfectly. So those are my thoughts on Slow West. Bert, give us your thoughts on this one.
Well, one of the things that makes the podcast interesting is when there's dissension a little bit, right?
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of westerns.
Right.
I did check this one out. And I 310 to Yuma, great western. The Lone Ranger film, the new one, that would very good, surprising, very good. But this one, I got a different read on it, and I felt it lacked any kind of intensity for the most part. You mentioned kind of the look of it. I felt that the look was like the palette was just kind of dark and drab a lot of the time, because something like Lone Ranger is kind of stark and it really is vivid and really sticks out, and so it just didn't really reach me very much. The lead kid, Cody Smith McPhee, I just felt like he lacked any kind of charisma. But I didn't really like him either in the X-Men films he was in. I don't know. I'm not trying to launch an assault against the guy, but I just don't really get it. I don't have the McFever, I guess. With that kid. And then the ending of the movie, because we're doing spoilers, right? Is that
Yeah, we've all
spoilers?
seen. So yeah.
Yeah, I just felt the ending was really kind of unsatisfying. Here you have this journey; it takes you all this way, and granted, it would be just like every other film if it ends the way you think it will. But I don't know if that's supposed to be irony. She's the one that kills him when there's, they're at, like, it's poetic. Maybe, I don't know. It wasn't the ending I was kind of hoping for. And then as far as the shootout, from that house, that was decent, but I couldn't help but think, the Young Guns shootout, for instance, is so much better. That one, overall as a film, I will say, you gave me some good points to think about, but when I was watching it, it just kind of failed to entertain me.
A little too slow, a little too West for you.
Maybe. Right.
It's in the title, Bert. It's in the title.
Yeah, it's the clue. It's the clue I should have had. Yeah.
Josh, go ahead and give us your thoughts on Slow West.
Well, before I do, Bert, I showed this to my family actually last week, and they're in your camp as well. My dad literally was like, "Josh, I know you know good movies. Why'd you pick this?"
Was it because of the ending or just in general?
I think it was kind of the whole thing, but especially
Okay.
when they did the dream scene, I think that really threw him because like
Oh,
it's not traditional for a Western at
sure.
all to
Yeah.
do something
Yeah.
like that. So I was like, what is this? But yeah, I think it was the ending too. It was just yeah. But that's the reason I love it so much is the ending. So much throughout
Mm.
this movie is shocking and unexpected and not typical of a Western or most movies even. Like at the scene when they're in the general store area, and then they get robbed, and then uh, Jay, I was like, what's his name? I don't want to say Cody Smith McPhee every time. When Jay shoots the lady in the back, which first of all, I was kind of surprised that he would do that, but anyway, he does, and usually that doesn't happen in a movie. Usually you don't shoot women in a movie, and then like they escape, and oh my gosh, there's kids there, and you're just like the energy, everything is just taken right out of you. You're just like, oh my gosh. And then what are they going to do? Like there's so much moral quandary, is that the right word? Moral
Mm-hmm.
decision making, ethical decision making that happens in this movie that just makes it so interesting. And then yeah, at the end and the shootout, and then he gets in there, and then she just thinks he's a bad guy. Why would he be halfway around the world? There would be no reason that he would be there. She'd have no reason to think he would be there. And like he's coming in, and he's not her, or her dad's dead, and it's not her Indian friend whose name I can't remember. So he's a bad guy. And yeah, that was unexpected too, because you usually don't have one of the main characters die in a movie, let alone at the hand of the person they love and they're seeking after the entire thing. So that blew me away. Yeah, I don't know. I just really enjoyed it. And like you said, Cameron, some of these visuals, not of the American West, but that's okay, were striking. You get to see like the trees and the clouds, and like I don't know, it was just all really cool. The music stood out to me this past time that I watched it. Yeah, just really well paced as well, even though it's a little bit of a slow burn, if that's the right word. But they, like you said, with the flashbacks and the way they unfold the story and kind of what's going on, because they don't want to tell you anything, they just start the movie, aside from the narration. But it's really interesting as you learn more as you're going and learn about the relationship with Silas and these other guys that he used to be a part of the gang and stuff like that. Yeah, just some really cool things like like all the way at the end, right before they get out of the forest with the Indian shooting him and the right in the hand, and like that was unexpected. Um, I don't know, just a lot of unexpected things in this movie, at least for me, like the flood, the flash flood, that was cool. Just I don't know, just stuff you don't see. There's a lot of different things all in one movie. That doesn't usually happen like that. You don't usually see all these different kinds of things. Yeah, and when you were talking, Cameron, about the like the poeticness of it and the layeredness of it, I was like, oh, did he write it too? And yeah, he did write it too, which was pretty cool. So yeah, it has that leans into that like musical layeredness and kind of building of a symphony up until the crescendo at the end. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this movie. It was I don't know if it's a lot of fun is the right word, but yeah, it was a lot of amazement. It was like, what is going on?
Right.
Unexpected coolness.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely different. It's definitely a unique, it's not your traditional Western. It's not Young Guns, it's not these kind of like action driven films that,
Yeah.
we're used to in Hollywood, right? I mean, it's like a weird kind
Mhm.
of unique thing. And that's why it stands out to me and I enjoy it so much. There's even a poetic moment where after he gets shot, he falls down and he sees
Oh,
the Native American character give Rose a
oh,
kiss, and then
oh.
the salt gets shot above him and it goes into his wound. And so that's a little on the nose, maybe, but it's
Mhm.
like, again,
They
that's kind
just
of what they're going for. That's kind of like, yeah, it's like,
twist
these
the
are words.
knife.
Yeah,
Oh,
right. Twisting the
I
knife a
was
little.
watching. I was watching with my friend. I showed it to him a couple months ago, and he was like, like everything. He was like, "Oh no, bro! Like right, like you're gonna kiss, like do that right in front of him, and you just shot him first of all, and then that, and then the salt, and it's just like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
just keep digging the knife in this poor kid."
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh,
He's
and
having
then
a
she said,
bad
and
day.
then at the very end, she's like, no, like, okay, I understand what you were doing, so like, here's a goodbye kiss or something. No, like just, or just like let him slowly die. But no, you say, silly boy, and just drive the knife in one more time, right
Yeah,
as he dies.
right.
Like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
man,
life in the
what
West
an
was not as easy as it may seem. Very difficult time, and I think that's what they
Uh,
were trying to get across is how brutal reality can be, and how
mm,
it's kind of a coming of age story, and in my mind too. He's kind of learning about the harsh reality of life. But anyways, let's move on to our next film. That is Bert, your number two pick. Tell us what it is.
it is Dumb and Dumber, Peter Farrelly and Bobby Farrelly. Actually, I guess it was uncredited. So yeah, Dumb and Dumber, 1995, I believe, made for $2 million and grossed $247 million. That's
wow,
insane. Yeah. And there's some interesting behind the scenes things about this. I guess for Jim Carrey's part, 25 actors turned it down or something like that. And then the studio
whoa,
came to the director and said they really wanted Jim Carrey for it. And then Jim Carrey said he really wanted a dramatic actor, so he wanted Jeff Daniels, and the studio was hoping Jeff Daniels would pass on it because they didn't think that was a good matchup because he had just done dramatic roles. Jeff Daniels, he wasn't a comedy guy at all for the most part. We don't talk about comedies a lot, by the way. So that's one reason I'm kind of excited to talk about this.
mm,
The film does have good direction, but great writing. And you wouldn't think of Dumb and Dumber as having great writing. I think a lot of people sort of dismiss it as, oh, that's just people being dumb. But the director's responsible for the tone and the, has to oversee the editing and that kind of thing. The callbacks to the jokes are really good. There's some great payoffs, so many quotable lines in this movie. I think the plot is kind of fun. The shot setups are really good, when you pay attention and kind of look for those things.
mm.
Some of the jokes are, some are a little too silly, even for me. And a few are pretty crude, the cop scene and the toilet scene. I still laugh at those, but I mean, for me, the laughter just works throughout. It's one that I keep going back to. I laughed so much at this in the theater. I mean, it was just unreal. I have to just mention one of the jokes. I'm not going to do the joke because if I mess up the timing, it'll be really bad. But it's when they're in the diner and they come up to Jeff Daniels and Jim Carrey, and ask for the order, and Jim Carrey says, "What's the soup du jour?" And the server, the waitress, says, "It's the soup of the day." And he says, that sounds good. I'll have that. And it's such a, like, there's layers to that joke. Like, I think the first time or two I saw that, I'm like, I didn't really get it. And then I understood sort of the cleverness, because you're not expecting that in a movie like this. And that's the argument I'm making for this film, is that there's a little more than what you think you're getting, when you, especially on rewatches. Jim Carrey, gives an incredible performance. I don't even know if it's his best role, though, because he's done so many good ones. We got to do a podcast on top Jim Carrey films. Jeff Daniels is unexpectedly great. Mike Starr is this guy that plays the sort of the thug that's chasing them around early on. He's great too. I think it's got a good look to it. It's a road movie. I think this and Tommy Boy are maybe two of the ones that do it the best, comedy wise. I like Tommy Boy slightly more, but honestly, this is one of my favorite comedies of all time.
Awesome. That's great. Josh, you want to give us your thoughts on Dumb and Dumber?
Yeah. So I did miss the joke. Is soup du jour, does that literally mean soup of the day? Is that
Yeah, it's like
translated?
French. And but
Oh,
when
okay.
when the way she responds, you would think he'd be like, "Well, I know that," but instead he
Yeah.
just says, okay, that sounds good." It's
Yeah.
just
That entire joke,
nutty,
I missed every
nutty.
layer of that joke.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I thought I would probably make it through life without seeing this movie. So
Mm,
that is
okay.
not the case. I did see it. I don't know. It's because it's exactly what you said. People just write it off like, oh, it's one of those
Yes.
stupid comedies like Beavis and Butthead or something of that nature, where it's like, oh, just a
Right.
trashy whatever comedy. Eh.
Mm,
Um, but like you said, it is a little crude, but there's more to it than that. Personally, I didn't care for it. Could be because I watched it by myself. I don't know. I feel
you
like
gotta
that
watch it with
was
at least
probably
10 people. That's the
yeah.
caveat.
Yeah, I feel like watching comedies by yourself isn't necessarily the way to go because the other people will catch things that you don't, and they
Yeah.
laugh, and everyone kind
Oh,
of
sure.
reacts
Chain
together,
laughter. Yeah.
which is yeah. I'm very good at joining in on chain laughter,
Gotcha.
um, even if I don't know what it's about, and then I laugh again once I figure it out. But yeah, no, it was it was a good movie, well made. I kind of like what you're saying with Jeff Daniels because I've only known him from because of When Dixie and The Martian. I think I've literally probably only seen him in those two movies. But
Speed. He
in
was in
those, he's
Speed too.
very. Oh, I
Speed
haven't seen
one, but
Speed
Speed
yet.
also. Oh, you haven't? Oh,
No, yeah, I know.
okay.
I have a big blind spot with a lot of movies that are famous that I'm supposed to have watched.
It's only been
Um,
out 29 years, so I mean, in time, I'm sure you'll
yeah.
see it.
It's only been out like almost as long as you've been alive, but it's okay. Um, yeah, so that was very unexpected, and he did a very good job at being at being like comedic and silly and like that. And he was actually almost like the more sensible, or at least I guess the more normal of the two of them. Like it was cool seeing their
Probably.
each of their interactions alone with Mary because Mary's creeped out
Yeah.
by Jim Carrey's character, but she's not really necessarily creeped out by Jeff Daniels' character, which I thought was
Yeah.
interesting. Just seeing how each of their dumbness in their own way,
Yes.
like how other people respond to it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, a lot of quotable lines. I think I've definitely heard a couple of them quoted before,
Mm.
not knowing what it was from. But yeah, I would say I was very impressed that this is someone's first movie. Like that's and to be this famous as well, this famous of a movie. It's very impressive.
Excellent. Great thoughts. Yeah, I'm a little mixed on this one, honestly. It's my second time watching it. I didn't grow up watching it or anything. First of all, I agree. It's probably the dumbest, smartest movie ever made because there are some
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really intelligent stuff going on here, but other stuff that's just silly, just dumb,
Yeah.
that I just
Yeah.
don't connect with. So it
Oh.
is definitely it's very well shot. I totally understand what's going on the whole time. I never get
Hmm.
lost. I feel like
Mhm.
they don't fully capitalize on the plot, which is actually really good.
Yeah.
It's basically
Yeah.
these two idiots that come into this crime plot and like there's hitmen after them. And I
Yeah.
feel like they
Yeah.
never fully developed that in a way that they could, that could have been really good. When the hitman is in the car with them, that is like one of the funniest scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
I cracked up at that scene. I thought it was excellent.
A lot of
So,
ad-libbing in that scene, by the way.
oh, really?
Oh,
Interesting.
Yeah.
really?
Interesting.
Yeah. Like the
Yeah.
world's most annoying
So,
noise or something like that. That
Right,
was
Oh my
right.
Ad
gosh.
lib. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay, that's great. Yeah. Look, of course, Jim Carrey's a genius actor. Yeah, I'd love to do a whole podcast on him. Jeff Daniels is wonderful as well.
Yes.
I just feel like I'm glad you brought up Tommy Boy because I feel like that movie is better because the characters are total opposites. Whereas
Mm,
this movie, they're too similar
sure. Uh-huh.
to make it always work as well as it could, as well as it does in
Gotcha.
Tommy Boy. You
Hmm.
know,
Gotcha. Yeah.
David Spade and
Hmm.
Chris Farley are like total opposites, so they play off each
Yes.
other perfectly. Whereas
Yeah.
this, it can for me, it was just sometimes it was over the top in a way that just it didn't work for me. Some of the scenes just go on too long, that kind of stuff. So I
Gotcha.
definitely have issues with it. Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels are not the issues. They're great. Their performances
Yeah.
are really good. I just wish that they had maybe been written a little more differently from one another.
Sure.
The film does have a lot of heart though, and I really like the characters. They really make you kind
Yeah.
of fall
Yeah.
in love with these two guys and like you really care about
Hmm.
them in a way that you're kind of not expecting. So
Yeah.
yeah, Farley did a great job directing it absolutely as a debut. I mean, to have such an iconic movie, like you
Hmm.
said, so many quotable lines and memorable moments that have lived on for years and years, and that's why this movie has kind of held up. I think is because of the quality of a lot of the jokes and the quotes. So yeah, again, it doesn't fully work for me as a movie
Hmm.
as a whole, but I still get a lot out of it. I still laugh several times and still really enjoy both of these actors, just kind of going wild essentially in
Yeah.
this
Hmm.
film. So yeah, good
Good.
stuff. Good pick. Now we're on to Josh's number two. Why don't you give it to us, Josh?
So my number two is 10 Cloverfield Lane, the dubbed spiritual sequel to the movie Cloverfield. So the director, Dan Trachtenberg. Is that how you pronounce it?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
And the first time I didn't know anything about this except that it was a Cloverfield movie. The first time I watched it, I had seen Cloverfield, not when all the hype came out, unfortunately. So I missed all like the suspenseful marketing and stuff. But I did go back and watch a trailer for this one, and even the trailer is done very well. It kind of mirrors the movie in the same kind of like what's going on, or like, and you kind of try and figure out it's all not what it seems.
Hmm.
Um, and even in the trailer, they communicate that very well. So thought they did a good job with that. But we're not here to talk about the trailer. First time I saw the movie, absolutely blew me away. I was gripped by it. This and District 9, I would say, were two of the picks in my top five that were just immediate blown away, has stuck with me since kind of films. Yeah, I didn't know at the time, but I guess this wasn't originally supposed to be a Cloverfield movie. But I guess J.J. Abrams saw what was going on and liked it, and he wanted to bring it in, I guess, as part of the Cloverfield mythology. And so they changed the ending a little bit to instead of I don't know, it was supposed to be like monsters or dogs or something, but then they changed it to the aliens. Is that what it
Mm.
was?
I think that's right.
You're
Yeah, I
nodding your
haven't
head,
read a ton
Cameron.
about it, but yeah, I know it was originally a separate screenplay that they brought into
Yeah,
this kind of universe.
yeah. And so I guess you can kind of see that a little bit because like Cloverfield is just aliens, whereas this kind of has like oh, could aliens have done that or but that's okay because it's still an amazing movie and there's three main actors in this movie, and they carry the entire thing and they do it beautifully. All of them, like I think after I watched it the first time, I was like, I looked up to see if John Goodman had gotten an Oscar nom for this, and I don't think he did, which is very disappointing because he should have. He plays the line so well of unstable, crazy, and then not, and you're like the whole movie, you're like, what is this guy really about? Is he crazy? What has he really done? What am I really safe? Are we okay? What's going on? Like that tension is like the through line that they have the entire time you're watching it. And like I said, they do a very good job revealing things as you go, and a very well paced, very well written, and very well acted film. I'm blown away. This is a directorial debut.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this movie. I've got it right here. I got to watch it again this
Nice.
week and yeah, have a great time with it. It is just super tense. I mean, the whole movie basically is just this kind of intense thriller where you're constantly guessing, right along with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's
Hmm.
wonderful in the lead role. You're just kind of
Yeah.
with her the whole time, trying to figure out what's going on. Is this guy lying? Is he telling the truth? And yeah, John Goodman is just incredible. I feel like a young director can kind of re-energize these kind of veteran
Hmm.
actors to give them, especially when it's something like this. I don't think John Goodman had ever done a role like this before,
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
I had seen or that I know about. And so I feel like, yeah, he's just absolutely, unlike you've ever seen him before. And then, of course, John Gallagher Jr. is the other actor who also does a fantastic job in his role.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I like the small cast. I like the single location. The whole movie, we're
Yeah.
basically in the bunker the whole time. And they really make it work. They really utilize it very well. So, yeah, I'm a really big fan of this movie. I might like it better than Cloverfield, actually.
I do.
Oh,
I think it's close. It's really hard to say because Cloverfield's just such a unique experience. But
mhm.
this one, I think, with the performances and the way it builds, to that ending, which totally works for
Hmm.
me. I think the ending, some people it doesn't fully work for them, and that's why they maybe put this one lower than the first one. But for me, it totally works. It pays off, and it really
Yeah.
goes out with a bang. So yeah, great visual storytelling, a lot of good camera work. Like you mentioned, editing, the music is great too. So yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of this one. Bert, what are your thoughts on 10 Cloverfield Lane?
Yeah, and spoilers are good again, I assume,
Yeah,
on
sure.
this. Um, I yeah, I have to mention that there's the movie The Mist
Mm,
is kind of similar to this. It's almost like its own genre. Like there's probably other films too that you could put in this category of
Mm.
you got some people, they get hunkered down kind of abruptly. Then there's like monsters or something out there, maybe. But some people don't believe it, and you know what I mean, and there's
hmm
infighting and all this
Mm.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So it's almost like I don't know what you call that genre, but probably too long to have like a quick little descriptor. Yeah, I really enjoy this movie. It's funny, I saw it on an airplane the first time I saw it,
Oh wow.
and not the most
That was a
ideal
tense flight.
condition. Yeah, yes, it became more tense than it should have been. But and I'm a huge fan of the original Cloverfield. This is obviously quite a bit different with pacing, but it
Mm.
is very intense, just like the first Cloverfield. And I really like this bunker. I find this kind of an interesting thing that when it's in film where um these people are trying to survive, and I like sort of the little details about how it's set up, like the air filtration and stuff like that. I like when I get to
Yeah,
see
yeah.
that stuff. You don't always. A good example is Blast from the Past. And they have this giant bunker, and it's got like a grocery store and all kinds of stuff in it. It's
Oh
hilarious if
wow.
you haven't seen it. It's one of my favorite comedies also. But that's a great story that deals with an underground bunker. Christopher Walken's in that one too. Great stuff. And then there's some really good setups in this when you're watching it and you see the lady come up to the bunker and you don't know what's going on, but her face is like melting. So then you're sure
Yeah.
it's this movie, right? And then you find out later it's not that movie. And I was my second time watching it, I didn't really remember. I'm like, yeah, but what that doesn't explain the lady that walked up to the, but then they explain that, and so I really like those payoffs because I don't want to be spoon fed everything when I'm watching a film, and that's one of
Mm.
that's one of the rewarding things in this movie. I do wish with the ending that it was either more all in on Cloverfield, like the same monsters, or not at all, because this could have kicked off its own franchise. It's its own series,
Mm.
really, if they would have
That's
steered
true.
clear of Cloverfield. But if you're going to bring it in, I'd really like to see those same kind of creatures. They were absolutely terrifying in the first Cloverfield. And so I don't know why they didn't just use the exact same ones. Maybe they thought, I mean, and they have reasons. Who knows? I could speculate, but yeah, this is one I really enjoy for sure.
Yep,
Mm.
definitely. Yeah, Cloverfield Paradox kind of tried to explain that, but to me it kind
Yeah,
of failed. But yeah, this one
yeah,
is
Yeah.
a great film, a great sequel, a great standalone movie, but
right.
cool that it's kind of tied in that way. So yeah,
Mhm.
excellent pick. All right, we're on to our number ones. My number one pick, favorite directorial debut of all time. It is Sidney Lumet's 12 Angry Men. This one released April 10th, 1957, has a runtime of 1 hour and 36 minutes. It is directed again by Sidney Lumet, who passed away in 2011 at age 54.
Mm.
Over his career, he
Wow.
was nominated for 5 Oscars, including 12 Angry Men, Dog Day Afternoon, The Network, and The Verdict. This film ended up winning Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay for Reginald
Incredible.
Rose. Reginald Rose wrote the original television film on which this feature film was based. It was a big hit on
Oh.
TV, and
Hmm.
so they decided to release a feature version, recast, got a new director, got Lumet in there. So yeah, it was a big hit on TV. Unfortunately, the box office wasn't huge on it. It was actually considered a failure at the time, but over years, of course, has garnered much critical acclaim and is now hailed as one of the great American movies. It's in the Library of Congress. This is a movie that I really was just blown away by. I remember watching it for the first time and just hadn't really watched a movie like this, a black and white, old school movie. Again, another one that's a single location, relatively small
Yeah.
cast, 12 cast members, but it just held my attention the whole time. And I was just amazed
Hmm.
by how well the camera work was. The performances are outstanding. And the direction, of course, is just top notch. So this is a movie about a jury on a murder trial trying to decide the fate of one young man. And it's really under the surface is railing against McCarthyism, which was big back in the
Mm.
50s, the whole kind of lynch mob mentality, the blacklist, the anti-communist era, Un-American Activities Committee, and all that going on. So it was very much the filmmakers railing against that whole kind of ideology. And they just do a great job of, again, building the story, right? So you started off, everyone's on the same page. This guy's guilty. And then Henry Fonda's like, not guilty. And we got to talk this out and figure out what's going on here. And so the whole movie becomes about them trying to figure out, if the facts line up, and the way they do it and the way it unfolds and the way they talk it out and the way they act it out and all these different little conversations that go on when they go into the restroom or they come back out and they kind of go off into their separate corners at times. It's all done so well. It's all shot brilliantly. It's really interesting because the movie begins with an above eye level mounted kind of wide angle lenses, which gives the audience a greater depth of the subjects that we're watching. But as it progresses, you'll notice that the focal length is gradually increased. By the end, almost everyone is shown in close-ups. And they're using these telephoto lenses from a lower angle, which decreases or shortens the depth of field to create this kind of palpable sense of claustrophobia and intimacy with these
Mm.
characters as we get to know them more and as we're drawn into the story more. So
That's
it's just,
cool.
again, visually is just so smart the way they thought it all out. Again, I'll mention Henry Fonda. He's fantastic. One of his greatest roles here. Director again, Lumet. His primary job is to tell the story visually, and it's another one I feel like. Of course, the dialogue's great; it's very well written. But if you mute it, you can really tell what's going on and who's on what side and how their allegiances are shifting and that kind of thing. So again, excellent visual storytelling. The director's job, of course, is primarily to tell the story visually, but also to direct the actors, right? That's really why they're on set, is to actually communicate with the actors what's going on in the scene, where are you emotionally, what do we need to happen in this scene to move the story forward. And Lumet is an expert at this as well. I mean, throughout the movie, you totally get why these guys end up saying not guilty and why, the one holdout is holding out at the end. There's very personal reasons and prejudices that these characters have and that they let go of or don't let go of. And so just an excellent film, thematically, great performance wise, great, the way it's shot. Of course, it's all black and white. At this point, I think another reason the movie probably didn't do well is because TV was very popular. The thing was starting to go into color and things were starting to be shot in more of a widescreen format. And this was shot in black and white and, the 185 aspect ratio, which was, just different, more classic than even films in the late 50s were moving towards kind of a different look and style. So but I appreciate it for that. I really do. I think it works well for the story of, kind of a black and white issue of, a murder trial. Is someone commit the death penalty here to this guy, or is, he going to be named innocent? So excellent story, excellent movie. It almost makes you proud to be called for jury duty. It almost makes that exciting.
Mm.
It's probably
Yeah.
the only movie that makes me, oh, I got a jury summons. I can be like those guys in 12 Angry Men. Yeah, just great emotional storytelling. It's psychological, it's philosophical, and very impactful. So one of my favorite movies ever made, 5 stars. It's in my top 10 of all time. So those are
Wow.
my thoughts on 12 Angry Men. Bert, you had not seen this yet, I know. So do you want to give
Right.
us your thoughts?
Sure. My thoughts on 12 Angry Sweaty Men.
Yes.
Um, Cam, I'm not picking on you today, but I did watch this, and the problem is that it was predictable. I knew 6 minutes in, when they take that first vote and they're like, one person says not guilty, and I'm like, oh, so are they gonna like try to convince? Is he gonna try to convince everybody else? And by the end, he's set free. And I'm not someone that tries to guess that stuff, but it was just seemed kind of obvious. And if the journey's worthwhile, then that's one thing too. But it's unfair to say predictable because this is what 70 years ago or something. So, if I had watched this when it first was released, as a whole, I can tell you that I probably would have been like, oh, the greatest courtroom drama of all time, because there's some good stuff there. But just looking back with the perspective I have now, it just subjectively, I just kind of felt like the script is dated. Of course, it's kind of dated because it's way back then. But I did feel like it was also kind of clunky and nonsensical at times, not pervasively, but at times. I thought there were some bizarre camera angles that didn't do much to enhance really what I was watching. There was some good acting. Lee Cobb, I thought, did a really good, but a couple of the actors weren't, I felt like, as good as maybe they should have been. I did like seeing Jack Warden too in a younger role. That was kind of neat. But really, I just kind of spent most of the movie kind of hoping that it would maybe take a different turn or not turn into what I kind of saw coming. And that didn't really happen. And it just really didn't entertain me much. It's just because of there's been so many movies since then that I felt like A Few Good Men is maybe the best example, because it's just, to me, that is really intense and really good and not necessarily predictable when you're watching it and that kind of thing. And I know that, Cam, not just you, but so many people consider this one of the greatest films of all time. I don't know what to tell you. I watched it, like, it's not bad, but it just doesn't do much for me. I feel like I've seen so much since then that just entertained a lot more.
Gotcha. Appreciate your thoughts. Let's get Josh's thoughts on 12 Angry Men.
So I really enjoyed it. This is only the second time I've seen it, but the first time I watched it, I was watching it with my mom, and I don't think she had seen it either the first time. But it got over, and we were both just like, "Wow, that was a good movie." But yeah, like you said, it's. I didn't know that about the lenses. That's and the way they bring start out and then bring you in. I thought that was really cool. I did notice the shots, which I think are the shots that they used for that Criterion Collection you have, or that poster.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I was the only thing that's weird to me about this film is the paper towel roll thing. But it was like, what, ew, you reuse it? Um, but I thought that was interesting. But no, I agree with everything you said, Cameron. I really enjoyed this movie, and I loved the way that they just drop you right in. And oh, by the way, here we're at the end of the trial. We're starting at the end. We're not telling you
Yeah.
what happens. You have to learn it as they're going through and explaining. And I thought they really did a really good job with that. And except for the part where they show you the layout of the room, it's all audio.
Right.
It's all of what they have said. I remember when I went to rewatch it, I remember it kind of like, I don't know. It was like I could picture everything, like, and I was remembering what I had pictured everything. And then as I'm watching, I'm like, oh, they don't show you anything.
Hmm.
And I thought it was really interesting that I had translated everything they had said into kind of like reading a book,
Yeah.
into like a visual image, and that's what I was remembering. And I thought that was really a really cool aspect. Like you said, this does make being a jury member look really fun and cool and detective-y, because like I wouldn't think to layer over evidences and be like, okay, so if this was happening at the same time this was, then this doesn't jive. But it's really cool, and I really love. We need it more today, especially on social media, especially on Twitter, the innocent till proven guilty mentality, because so
Yeah.
many times we're like, I think maybe like what you're talking about back then with like the communists and like blacklisting and all that, it's kind of similar to cancel culture nowadays. They're like, they see something and they just write them off, no explanation, you're guilty, done. You get, doesn't matter what you say, you're done. And so like that's like people, we need that today. We need more innocent until proven guilty. And I like that they emphasize like it's not like I think he's innocent. It's that I doubt that he's guilty. It's a shadow of a doubt.
Right.
Which was a really cool point to hit home. And I thought to your point about the director and visual storytelling, I thought that they like verbally explained the last guy's hang up, but at the very end, all they do is show it.
Yeah.
They just show the picture. I thought that was really good visual storytelling. Is you piece it together from we've heard before, but that's you're seeing that's the connection. That's why he's won't let go of him being guilty. And I don't know. I just thought it was a really intense movie, and I like that you see the totally different. They did a good job of making it like, oh, these are all people from all walks of life and all belief systems and worldviews and stuff like that. And like the one I don't know what you call it, like saying, oh, those people, everyone like we know
Right.
how those people are.
Yeah.
um I don't know, I guess that would be like a monetary. I can't think of the word right now, but and just kind of like you see like hints throughout, and I think they did a good job. Like I think to your point, Bert, about some of like the kind of goes off in weird things at some time. I think part of that, I think it does, but I think that's good because like it kind of reflects real life. Like it wouldn't necessarily be like they a couple times they're kind of like, well, let's go back to this, or they jump off what they were doing and go to something else, or like have random tangents. And I think that's kind of like what it would be like if in real life if we were in like a courtroom or a jury room. And I just really liked that it reflected kind of like how a conversation would probably go in real life. I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, my favorite part about the film is just the fact that you figure out the story, you're learning the story along with them and discovering it, and it just has that kind of like sense of discovery and it just keeps your interest the whole time as you're learning what really happened and trying to figure it all out, which I really liked that aspect.
Excellent. Great
You know,
thoughts.
Josh, you mentioned the way it's you don't see the trial, you see just the you know the result afterward, the jury
Hmm.
deliberations and that kind of thing. And it reminded me, I was thinking this as I was watching it, and I haven't sat in a jury or been in the jury room, but I've sat through a few trials with because of my work. And I think that was one of the things that was a bit difficult to accept, was that the way the jurors have to sort of go through everything and rehash and create things and all that. If they're doing that, it's because one or maybe both of the attorneys that were involved just made a colossal error when they were trying to lay out their case, And so I just didn't really feel like it was how that would really go down, unless, in a maybe a rare circumstance, some of those things might happen, but it just didn't really ring true as what would happen in real life. And I think I was looking for something a little more realistic too, but it's Hollywood. But that was just one thought I had too.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Great.
I did think about that once when I don't remember. It was at some point where they were re-going over something. I'm like, wouldn't they have already like
Yeah.
why are they re-going over this?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
why
They're
are they
basically holding the trial in the jury room. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Which they did make
Yeah.
the point that one of the guys was essentially incompetent, one of the
Oh, did they?
attorneys.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Well, there you
I
go.
think the main guy's
That would
attorney.
explain it.
I don't know.
That might
But
explain it. Yeah.
Right.
it's
Right.
a good point.
Great, guys. Great thoughts. We're going to move on now to Bert's number one directorial debut. What is it, Bert?
It is Hoosiers, director
Right.
David Anspaugh. Not a really well-known director. His next, I guess the other ones you might know are Fresh Horses, which I think was a Matt Damon movie, and Rudy, which is another sports theme movie,
Oh,
except that one's football. And Dennis Hopper nominated for an Oscar here. Jerry Goldsmith nominated for score. I just can't say enough about Jerry Goldsmith's score. I mean, it's a little bit too synthesized for my taste. That was the 80s, but I love this. I absolutely love the themes throughout. It's one of my favorite
mm,
scores of all time. The film itself, I mean, the director just perfectly captured sort of this Midwestern small town, middle of
mm,
nowhere kind of feel. And he's from like Indiana somewhere, and it's from a small town, so that stands to reason. And the 50s were just a much simpler time. People were different, back then than they are now. I just feel like it's really relatable. Farming is sort of like the bedrock of our country, obviously, and the director just he could have just left us to assume that farming is taking place. It's a movie, we don't need to spend time on that. But you actually see the characters farming in the movie, but it's got nothing to do with the
mm.
plot. But they use that as sort of a way to promote the dialogue throughout the film, which I didn't really notice until recent viewings of it, that is interesting, because I don't think that would always be included in a sports film, for instance. Let's see. I wanted to just mention this is another one that there's so many quotable lines. I don't know if they're meant to be quoted, but I can tell you that me and my buddies just were constantly quoting lines from this thing. Gene Hackman, the way he plays this role, it's very tricky because you want him to be endearing, but you also want him to be this
Mm.
military guy, a guy that can say things like, when you only have 4 players on the floor and because you sat your 5th guy that's eligible, and the ref says, we need another player. He says, my team's on the floor. And you see that look in his eye. Gene Hackman has that great way of doing that. I mean, this is the
Mm.
guy, Crimson Tide. I mean, the guy's kind of a heavyweight as far as acting goes, and he's so good at playing that. But yeah, you have these delicate scenes where he's doing the farming with like the people he's staying with, and that kind of thing. And with some of the characters, there's a lot of like intensity with them, and then a lot of love too. And it's just really gripping. I could give a lot more on this film, but I'll just say that it was very influential in my upbringing, and one of my favorite films of all time. This film it makes me love movies. That's the way I can describe it.
Excellent. Awesome stuff. Josh, you want to give us your thoughts on Hoosiers?
Yeah, so I'd never seen it before. I think I'd heard of it. I don't actually know what the word means. It didn't appear in the movie. I thought it was gonna be the team name, but that's just ignorant showing. It's something for Indiana or Illinois. I don't remember where this movie takes place. It's something
Yeah,
that references the people.
the people. The fact that they're basketball fans. I think number one, like I think like if you're from Indiana in the basketball realm, you're a Hoosier. And I think that might be
Okay.
Indiana University, if I can speak. I think they are Hoosiers. I think that's their
Oh,
what
okay.
do you call it, team name, Indiana Hoosiers. I think. I'm not a big Indiana college basketball fan, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't watch much of any basketball, so I'm definitely ignorant in that area.
Yeah, I think they
But
are the Hoosiers. Yeah.
oh, okay. But
Hmm.
yeah, I was it was a really good film. I know anything about it except like when you mentioned it with your other pick, Dumb and Dumber, I didn't know anything about it. I thought it was another comedy. And then I started and it's not a comedy.
Comedy about owls.
Um yeah. So like, oh, okay. And you mentioned Jerry Goldsmith and the synths. I thought that was really interesting because, like, I could see. I didn't know until they said. I didn't know when it took place exactly. I just obviously I knew it was old. And then like the synth comes in, and like I'm like, oh, that's so weird. This is
Yeah.
50s with
Yeah.
an 80s synth. This is like throwing me, but
Yes. Yeah.
like that was current at the time the movie came out.
Yeah.
That would have been like a modern music going
Mhm.
into and then 20 years 30 years from now you look back and like, oh, this movie's supposed to take place in the 60s, but it's got 2010s 2020s music. Like that would be,
Dubstep or something. Yeah.
yeah, I just thought that was a really interesting mix there. I thought that was really cool. Really,
Oh, okay.
even though it's like dated or whatever, I thought that was really cool that it was like both of these, they're both older than now, but they're both
Hmm.
playing at the same time, and one's of the age and one is of the age of the movie. Of
That's a good point.
yeah,
I
I thought
can
that
see
was
that as
really
a reason why
cool.
someone might not like the score. That's why I point out
Hmm.
that it's the themes themselves that I just think are really great, regards. And I like the presentation, but would it be better with a full on symphony? Maybe,
Yeah. I really like the themes too. I thought that was the music was pretty good there. Jerry, like it said, Jerry Goldsmith. I immediately was like, "Ooh!" My interest was piqued, and I was listening throughout the movie for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with like what you said. I think one of my favorite things about sports movies is that it's not necessarily about the sport. Like
Yeah,
obviously
exactly.
there's you playing it and or the actors playing it and everything, and there's the big game or that kind of stereotypical thing. But I like that like the real story is everything else that's going on around it or behind the
Yeah.
scenes. I thought they did a really good job with the story. That was really compelling. You're kind of like learning who this guy is. Gene Hackman's character, who he did a great job as well. There were only, I think, two lines that I didn't buy. When he said at the end that I want to kiss you for the moment I saw you or whatever, I was like, I don't
Yeah.
believe you.
Sure. Yeah. They could have left the romance out of it probably. There's like a 20-year age
um,
difference there, but
yeah, I thought at first, like when they first showed both those characters, I was like, are they gonna? No, she's like way younger than him. And then at the end of them, as like the like halfway
yeah.
point, I think from then on, I was like, I don't know if they like added wrinkles or if they're like showing us closer to her face, but I like was believing that she was a little older than I had first assumed. So it didn't bother me that much. But the
Yeah,
only other
yeah.
line is like when they're walking in the forest, or in the not it's not the forest, wherever they're walking, they're taking their walk.
Oh,
And then he asks her, like, would you go out with me, essentially? And then the camera cuts to another shot, and the first thing that you hear is she randomly says, she brings up his past or whatever. And I was like,
yeah.
oh, that was an odd change. It looked like maybe there was something on the cutting room floor there, but
Oh,
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. It was just a
yeah.
weird. It was like, oh, that
Weird
was
edit.
odd. Yeah, weird edit. But
Gotcha.
other than
Yeah.
that, everything about the film was so well done. I liked the shots. The basketball stuff was interesting. They really did a good job at, like, maybe you didn't know that much about basketball, but it kind of went you through like understanding what they're doing and what's going on. And
Yeah.
I like too that who's the best kid? Starts with the J, right? Joey?
Jimmy.
Uh
Oh, the best
Jimmy.
player? Yeah.
Yes, sorry, Jimmy. I liked that he wasn't in the team at first. I liked that it was like, oh, we're gonna make it's not gonna be
Hmm.
the like he's the one who carries it. I liked that it was, and even when he joined back, it wasn't like it's all about him. He carried it. I liked that it was
Yeah.
like they're gonna be a team and they're gonna have to learn and figure out how to be a good team first
Yeah.
before he would come back on it. I thought that was really cool. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I like underdogs when people stick up for underdogs. So I like anyone that was on the coach's side, trying to like just let him do his thing. It's about the big picture. It's about the future, not what you see right now. I like those moments when people are doing that too. That was cool. And then the one guy's dad. I thought that was really cool story element with the alcoholic.
The
He
shooter.
looked
Yeah.
familiar, like
Shooter.
I've seen him in something.
He's also in
Um,
Speed, by the way.
oh, well, it wasn't that.
Very good. Yeah.
um,
Dennis
yeah, I
Hopper, you're
really
talking
liked.
about. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I like that
Yeah.
character element. And I like when people give other people a second chance. I thought that was really uh,
Yeah.
something cool. I thought that he was gonna like. I mean, he did, but I thought they were gonna mess it up in a different way. But yeah, it was really really enjoyable movie. I can't believe I
Good.
haven't seen it before.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, we're discovering new movies here on the Real World all the time, which is good. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Hoosiers. I think this is a really well-made sports movie. Maybe one of the best. I don't know. We should maybe do a sports movies ranking one day, but um,
Mm,
this one's really good. It really balances the kind of, the sports action, I guess, the basketball
Hmm.
playing
mhm,
and all of that, which is really well shot, and they utilize slow-mo really well and
Yeah.
dissolves and montages very well with great character stuff, great character drama. Not just Gene Hackman and the way he deals with this whole town, but Dennis Hopper, as you've both mentioned, just delivering one of his greatest perform, if not his greatest performance ever. Just really stellar, amazing. The movie really wouldn't be the same without him and his character and that whole storyline.
mm,
It really provides the whole backbone, the emotional backbone of the story. And so,
mm,
yeah, all of that is excellent. As you both mentioned, also the romance with Barbara Hershey's character doesn't really work for me either. I
Yeah.
really think that's the weak point of the film and kind of takes away,
Sure.
but it's not the fault of the actors. Gene Hackman is one of my favorite actors ever.
Yeah.
Lex Luthor from the original Superman, all the
Right.
way through, all the way to his retirement. Now he's
Yeah.
enjoying his retirement at like 91 years old, I think. But
Right.
wow.
yeah, really, really great actor. And yeah, just good direction, solid direction all around. Like I said, the way all of it's shot really works. Some beautiful shots of the Midwest and
Hmm.
Jerry Goldsmith's score. It's good. There's a lot of really good themes in it. But like I said, like you guys mentioned as well, the synthy stuff kind of just feels odd for some reason to me. It
Makes
did,
it.
didn't
Yeah. Yeah.
doesn't fully work. It kind of is a bit jarring when you first hear it. You kind of, I guess, get used to it as the movie goes on. But no, really good film, stirring, kind of inspirational,
Hmm.
character centric, true story too,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
True
always
story.
an
Oh,
added
really?
element that makes it
Hmm.
really, really much more interesting and impactful.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
it's all about teamwork and faith and family and all the good themes that you want in a great
Mm.
kind of sports biopic, I guess. I do prefer Rudy. I
Really?
think I
Okay.
yeah, I actually like Rudy a little bit more than this one. Maybe because I saw Rudy first. I don't know, but
Oh,
I just think
okay.
Rudy is a really solid. It kind of like is a more focused film, I feel like too, where it's
Mm,
all about Rudy's journey. Whereas this
yeah.
one, it felt like there's Gene Hackman, there's the team, there's Dennis Hopper, there's like all these other elements going on that, and most of them work, but I just feel like Rudy's a little more focused. So yeah, but Hoosiers is excellent. So yeah, glad we got to talk about it.
So I wanted to that what you said, something you said made me remind me when you said about faith. That was something I noticed about this movie that would not happen now.
Right.
Is they were actually praying, and it wasn't just like, okay, let's pray, and then they cut. Like they
Right.
actually said the prayer, they actually quoted scripture. I was like, wow, that's really interesting and cool. And also, some of those prayers were a little whack. And like, are we praying or are we like, what's going on here?
But
Are we
probably
preaching? Are
accurate.
we praying? Are we? What are we? What's going on?
Right. For
Maybe,
the
yeah,
50s, they were probably very accurate. I mean, that's what would happen before
yeah,
any sporting event, at any school.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what would would have
yeah.
happened.
Which is, I'm glad they included that though. That was cool to see because yeah, again, you would not see that nowadays. Even
Yeah.
if it was true of the era, you wouldn't
Right.
see it if they were doing like if that movie was made today, you would have missed that part, or they wouldn't have even have
Maybe.
hinted that it had existed.
Right. It's
Maybe
true.
so.
It's true. All right, excellent guys. Good thoughts on Hoosiers. Now we're down to Josh's number one directorial debut. What do we got, Josh?
We have The Iron Giant, directed by Brad Bird. This is a movie that I grew up on, but haven't watched a ton. Like I have other movies like Lilo and Stitch. But immediately from the first time I saw it, it was definitely stood out to me. It stuck with me, obviously. I was actually when we were doing research for this, I was shocked to find out that this was Brad Bird's first film, because it's so good. And I was like, wait, this was his first one? It just totally shocked me. I absolutely love everything about this movie. It's just so well made, so well written. Even the voice cast, which is like well known people, they all disappear into their role, and they do a great job with that. I think the only one who didn't was this time anyway was John Mahoney because now I've seen Frasier, and so that's
I
what
love
I'm
John.
like
Yeah, I
hearing.
love him. Yeah.
But he still did a great job. But
Yeah.
everyone else just disappeared into the role. Yeah, some things I noticed this time, which I think Cameron, you pointed out in one of your Letterboxd reviews, was just like the communism overlay and like the Cold War and that kind of the tension there. That was something I hadn't noticed as a kid growing up watching it, at least
Sure.
not in the way that I like fully realized like I do now. Yeah, the chloroform, I didn't know what that was as a kid, so that always confused me. Or like I wasn't like usually it's clear whether it's a dream or not, and like that part it kind of muffles it. You're like, is this a dream? And then you kind of unfold it, but I didn't really know why or what was going on. Now I do. And also, the guy chloroformed a kid. Like that, there's so many things that that guy does that are not okay. So many red flags as he's living with them or whatever.
Hmm.
They're like, okay. But yeah, I think also growing up, I didn't realize the missile was a nuke. And so I was just like, oh, why can't they flee from it? But now, like, knowing that, like, oh, that's what it was. Because I don't think they actually say, maybe they do, but they heavily imply it's a nuke. And so, yeah, the reality, I guess, of that, as you can see it set in over the characters, it was more impactful to me this time as I was realizing that's what was actually happening. But yeah, some other great things about it. The humor is well done. Probably previously the funniest scene to me was until this viewing was when the hand is in the house and he's trying to get him out and they're in the bathroom and he's like making he's trying to push him out the window and then Mansley's like, this is why it's really important for you to chew your food. Like just random lines like that, they're really funny and stuck out to me. This time, my new favorite funny part is the cannonball, and it just and Dean's sitting there on the side and totally oblivious with the newspaper, and then he like looks down and looks up and sees it, and then he just like hides back behind it, and I don't know, his character is great, the as a like a beatnik and whatever, and kind of a rebel, and I really enjoyed his character. All the characters, they did a really good job at making them likable. Even Mansley, even though he's like the bad guy, he's like strangely kind of likable. And maybe that's just I can't remember the voice actor, but
That's Christopher
maybe that's kind of
McDonald.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think that's probably credit to him for making the character a little likable. But yeah, and then you can't beat the ending and recalling the line of this, stay here, no following, and Superman and all that. And the fact that they even said Superman, like they're referencing real things. Usually it's like a whole legality of rights and stuff like that to be able to mention stuff. So they don't. They just make their own superheroes and mention them. But that was cool. They mentioned real superheroes, which maybe it's because Warner Brothers. But yeah, it's just endearing. And as they say in Ted Lasso, everyone, all the guys are watching and like, oh, it's a kids movie or whatever, and like, oh, give them, make sure they have Kleenex. They'll be crying at the end of the movie, and of course they all are. So yeah, really good movie. If anyone who hasn't seen it, definitely needs to check it out.
Absolutely. Bert, give us your thoughts on The Iron Giant.
Yeah, I really like this one. I don't love hand-drawn animation. I've talked about this before, but I like it when it's presented in a creative style, like this film, and especially in a
Mm,
film like the Spider-Verse film or films.
mm,
But yeah, the visual style is really great. I got to mention this kid Eli Marienthal. His voice acting is really good. He's asked to stretch quite a lot. And I looked
mm.
him up. Apparently, he never worked again after this movie. So
Oh
I don't
wow.
know what happened. He's still alive, but just some really great voice acting. Yeah, this is a really enjoyable one. Lots of comedy, great visually, really good pick.
Mm,
Yeah, this is a movie that, kind of went under the radar when it came out in 99.
Mhm.
Not a lot of people saw it, did make a lot of money, but it's gained this huge cult following over the years
Mm.
as people have discovered it on DVD and now Blu-ray. I have the signature edition here, which includes an
nice.
extended cut of the film,
Oh,
which includes a couple extra scenes, one of them being the Iron Giant's dream, which actually shows us his whole origin story, which is really interesting. So
wow.
um, it's a movie that, again, we kind of warmed up to. I feel like it's one of those that I ended up seeing it. I don't even remember the first time I watched it, but just really liking it. And every time I watch it, I like it more. It's one I went when the signature edition was released back in, I want to say like 2016, something like that, maybe a couple years before that. We got to go see it in the theater. They re-released it in theaters. And
Wow.
so
Mm.
really great experience. It's become a family favorite. This is my brother Carson's favorite movie of all time.
Wow.
Oh
So
nice.
I'm sad he can't join us on this one. He'll have to give us his thoughts at a later podcast. But I'll try to do it justice. Brad Bird, genius guy who came out of nowhere with this movie that was such a kind of long shot, a very unique movie. It wasn't like a Toy Story or something like that. That was popular during this time. It was this 50s sci-fi throwback to like the War of the Worlds and The Day the Earth Stood Still and all these classic,
Okay.
Mm,
50s sci-fi movies. And he just had a really specific vision. Again, like I talked about at the top of the podcast, he had a really particular point of view of a story he wanted to tell that was very personal to him. This Blu-ray is worth getting, not just because the movie looks great and you get the extended cut, but also has a special feature called The Giant's Dream, which is all about how he came up with the idea for the story and why it's so
mm.
personal to him. His sister was killed due to gun violence. And
Oh
so
wow.
that's why he wanted to make this movie about his kind of idea was, what if a gun could decide not to be a gun? Basically, that's kind of his whole idea
Mm.
behind this film.
Mm.
And so that's why it's all about, life and death and the soul. They're dealing with a lot of heavy themes here especially for a
Yeah.
children's film. And it's presented in a way that, younger audiences can watch it and enjoy it. But there's
Yeah.
really a lot of depth here that is really, really emotionally just affecting. It also has, like you guys mentioned, great comedy, great moments. My favorite scene is the coffee scene. I mean, I just crack up every time. Hogarth just goes off on Dean with all the coffee he's been taking. That's great. A lot of very, very exciting moments too. Great action,
Mm,
just really, really well done. It's kind of, like you mentioned, that kind of Red Menace, the communism, the paranoid kind of thriller angle is a whole side of the film as well. It's also kind of a traditional like Old Yeller kind of Boy and His Dog story or
mm,
E.T. or something like that. It kind of
Yeah.
harkens back to. So has all these different elements, but it again presents it in a very fresh way that feels very new and different. They're combining 2D animation with 3D. So a lot of the giant himself is actually 3D animation.
Oh, really?
Few of the
interesting.
other elements are 3D. So the blend is perfect because you can't really tell a lot of the
Yeah.
time. You
No.
really,
I just know it looks good.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So they do a great job with all that. It's of course based on a book. I have not read it. It's called The Iron
Mhm.
Man, but that's what it's loosely based on. And it's just they do a great job. Like you said, the voice talent. I mean, Vin Diesel is absolutely amazing as the giant. I mean, he's doing so much with so little. It's really a great performance, very underrated, understated
Mhm.
performance that kind of gets overlooked, I feel like, because he's really, really doing a great job there. Like you mentioned, Burt Marienthal, he does a great job, carries the whole movie. Very young
Mhm.
actor. To do that is really quite a feat. Harry Connick Jr. as Dean is just super cool and charming and fun. Jennifer Aniston as Annie. She brings a lot of warmth to the film that I think is necessary. And so, yeah, this movie has it all. It has a great score too, excellent visual storytelling, really fun, great use of lighting too. A lot of scenes in the
Mhm.
dark where they're using flashlights and different things like that, and it all just looks stellar. So, yeah, an all around great movie. This one's definitely in my top, I don't know, probably 50 of all time. It's up
Wow.
there pretty high. It's one that I really enjoy. I've and again enjoyed more and more the more I watch it. And I think that has a lot to do with because of the fact that I'm a huge Superman fan, and the way they utilize the
Mm.
Mhm.
Superman kind of mythology here is really
Yeah.
impactful. I mean, the giant's last
Gotcha.
word being Superman, and he flies up and saves the day. It's just a great ending, very heroic and inspiring. And so, yeah, I get a lot out of this movie. Really, really enjoy it. So, yeah,
Mhm.
those are my thoughts on Iron Giant. All right, guys, that is the end of our directorial debuts podcast. Let us know your list in the comments below. Again, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all of our videos. Bert, thank you for joining me again.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
And thank you, Josh.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
It was fun. Hopefully, you guys had as much fun as we did. We will see you next time. We're talking all about Mission Impossible. So start your Mission Impossible rewatch. Dead Reckoning Part 1 is in theaters this weekend. So check it out. We will be happy to have our conversation. We're going to review and rank every Mission Impossible movie. Should be tons of fun. Join us next time right here on the